Good morning. Thank you very much for attending this presentation titled The Effects of Writing Motivation and Anxiety on Digital versus Pen and Paper Second Language Writing. My name is Maria Dolores Mellado from Rey Juan Carlos University. So, the aim of this study was to explore the role of writing anxiety and motivation in pen and paper versus computer mediated second language writing. This is an exploratory study and it is a first attempt to explore this issue of the effects of affective individual differences on the quality of paper versus computer based second language writing performance. As we know, the writing activities, both cognitive and affective, and individual differences play a role. In this slide, we see a summary of the empirical studies which looked into the relationship between writing anxiety, motivation, and second language writing. In terms of our knowledge of the role of these two affective variables in second language writing, we know from previous research that normally we find a negative link between writing anxiety and L2 written performance. However, we know from previous research that there is a positive link between writing motivation and second language written performance. The majority of these studies were performed on paper, that is why the medium of performance is not taken into account in meta-analytical studies in writing and second language acquisition. So medium of performance has not been considered as an important variable in previous research. For example, Lee's meta-analysis on aptitude, proficiency, and second language skills looks specifically at the correlation of aptitude and writing performance, but he did not look to see how this correlation varies across mediums. There are also three meta-analyses on working memory and reading, but in these three meta-analyses, the reading medium is not taken into account. But there is an exception, so there is only a study that takes into account the medium of performance. This exception is Inami et al.'s recent meta-analysis on working memory and second language reading. This study did look at the medium of reading task as a moderator of the main relationship. They found stronger correlations between working memory and paper-based reading tasks as compared to computer-based reading tasks. There is broad consensus that writing is a cognitively and affectively complex activity involving this interplay of linguistic abilities, cognitive resources, and emotional motivational states. Recognizing this, Hayes in 2012 revised his early cognitive model of writing to include affective factors and to conceptualize writing as situated within a dynamic task environment comprising social, physical, and technological elements. Among these, the writing medium, that is, handwriting versus digital tools, has emerged as a potentially influential factor. Importantly, in his revised model, Hayes in 2012 does not elaborate on the potential effects of medium on writing performance. So justification for our aim can be found in theory and also in empirical findings, and as far as theory is concerned, we draw on the views of embodied cognition, which state that mind, body, and world function integratively when we learn a language, and this postulate is specifically applicable to writing, which is considered to be a cognitive activity which is largely dependent on the way we engage our body in it and also in the way that we interact with the environment or the external medium during text production, that is, when performing a writing activity. So, writing represents a highly embodied activity in the sense that it is contingent on these interactions between writer's mind, body, and external environment. So, writing modality, that is, handwriting on paper versus typing using the computer, represents a learner external factor which is central in writing activity. We hypothesize that this is also applicable to affective individual differences because this embodied cognition view considers pen and paper writing as more effective as compared to the more detached and disembodied digital writing. This higher engagement of affect could be explained by the characteristics of paper writing, which is characterized by rich haptic kinesthetic experiences During writing, for example, we manipulate and touch paper and pen, and paper writing is less monotonous if we consider the hand movements which are involved. So these are our research questions. We wanted to investigate the role of writing anxiety in pen and paper versus computer-mediated writing. We also wanted to investigate the role of writing motivation in pen and paper versus computer-mediated writing, and finally whether or not medium is a source of anxiety in second language writing. We have shown in our introduction that there is some tentative indication that cognition can be involved differently in reading performance depending on the medium, that is, if we write on paper or if we employ a computer or processor. So we hypothesize differential involvement of affective individual differences in these two writing conditions, that is, that the role of affective individual differences may also differ depending on the medium of performance. A total of 42 native Spanish EFL learners participated in the present study. The participants were fourth-year applied linguistics undergraduate students from the University of Murcia in Spain, and they had an advanced level of proficiency. For the purposes of this study, the participants were randomly divided into the pen and paper group that performed the problem-solving writing task in handwriting. There is a total of 18 participants, and the digital group that performed the writing task digitally. There is a total of 24 participants. Participants in the pen and paper groups had a mean age of 21.77 years, and those participants in the digital group had a mean age of 21.33 years. There were three 50-minute sessions of data collection for both pen and paper and digital groups. During the first session, all participants signed a consent form and they completed the Oxford Placement Test in order to ensure comparable proficiency between the two groups. During the second session, the participants in the pen and paper group completed the writing task in a room at the university. They were invited to produce a written text in response to the complex version of the fire chief writing task taken from Gilabert. Each participant was provided with a task prompt and instructions with a blank writing sheet on which to write their text. The participants were asked to read the instructions carefully and also to familiarize with the picture in order to get an overall idea of the situation in the task before starting to write their compositions. The participants were given 50 minutes to perform the task, but there was no specific word limit established. The learners finished the writing task within a range of 12:47 minutes. During the third session, the pen and paper group completed the affective individual difference questionnaires by hand in a room at the university, and the participants in the digital group performed all tasks at home using their personal computers. During the second session, the digital group performed the writing task. The participants received the prompt and instructions by email, and they were required to email the completed task to the researcher within the time limit of 50 minutes. The participants were asked not to use dictionaries and any other external resources during task completion. Finally, during the third session, the digital group received by email the instructions for the questionnaires on affective individual differences, and they performed the questionnaire at home, either printing the questionnaires in order to complete them by hand or completing them directly on their personal computers. This is the writing task that participants did on paper and digitally. Here we can see the task prompt and instructions of the task that participants had to perform. So as I mentioned before, the participants were invited to produce a written text in response to this complex version of the fire chief writing task. As we can see, this task consists of a problem-solving, picture-based writing activity in which participants are presented with an image of a burning building from which numerous people need to be rescued. Participants were asked to explain what actions they would take to save as many people as possible from the burning building, in what order they would rescue said people, and why they would take these actions and this specific order. We selected this task because it has been widely employed and found to be effective in numerous other studies conducted within our research team and also in previous second language writing studies, and also because it has been empirically validated in terms of the cognitive complexity required to complete the task. To measure writing anxiety, we employed the Second Language Writing Anxiety Inventory developed by Cheng in 2004. This questionnaire consists of 22 items which are scored on a 5-point Likert scale, which ranges from 1 meaning strongly disagree to 5 meaning strongly agree. We selected this questionnaire because of its effectiveness in measuring second language writing anxiety and because it has been developed with reference to second language learners and because this instrument has been assessed and proved to be a valid and reliable instrument to measure second language writing anxiety. Finally, participants were asked to answer a range of open-ended questions in order to collect in-depth information about the participants' experiences in second language writing anxiety. And finally, the L2 Writing Motivation Questionnaire, developed by Waller and Papi in 2017, was used to measure writing motivation. This questionnaire consists of 22 items which are scored on a 5-point Likert scale, which ranges from 1 meaning strongly disagree to 5 meaning strongly agree. We selected this questionnaire because the items that are included give a full picture of the students' intended efforts for writing in the L2, their desire to write in the L2, and their L2 motivational intensity. And another reason why we use this questionnaire is because the items not only focus on learners' writing motivation but also on their attitudes towards written corrective feedback and their implicit theories of general and writing intelligence, thus offering a comprehensive questionnaire. CAF measures were employed to assess the quality of second language written text. To assess accuracy, we calculated the ratio of errors per 100 words. Then total time in seconds and words per minute were employed as the measures of fluency. For lexical complexity, we employed CIINECO software to obtain automated measures of lexical density, sophistication, and diversity. We also employed CIINECO to obtain automated measures of syntactic complexity, including the mean length of T unit as a general measure of complexity, coordinate phrase per clause as a measure of coordination, dependent clause per clause to assess subordination, and for nominal complexity, mean length of clause and the ratio of complex nominal per clause were calculated. As main findings, the quality of digital writing is mainly connected to second language proficiency. There is a more intensive involvement of affective individual differences in pen and paper writing, and specifically in the area of lexical complexity. Medium does not necessarily represent a source of writing anxiety, and finally, higher accuracy was found in digital writing. So, as a discussion, the role of affective individual differences in second language writing may differ depending on the writing modality. Learners may deploy their inner resources flexibly in different writing modalities. The higher involvement of affective individual differences in pen and paper writing may be explained by the fact that paper writing represents a rich embodied experience, and finally, higher familiarity with digital writing may explain higher accuracy as compared to paper writing. So, of course, this research has a number of limitations. It is an exploratory study. We have a very small number of participants. Writing was performed in laboratory conditions, which can also change the way that learners performed a writing task as compared to classroom conditions. We only used one task, which is an argumentative reasoning task, so we have to try this with other types of tasks, such as argumentative essays, expositions, and other genres. So for future research, it would be interesting to perform research with a bigger number of participants It would be interesting to perform classroom-based research and also complement it with some controlled experimental studies. We should also ask the participants about their preferred medium and measure the cognitive states. We could center not only on affective individual differences but on other cognitive individual differences. And it could also be interesting to take measures of digital literacy, to take measures of the keyboarding skills, and also the measures of affective style of the participants. Thank you very much for your attention.